Welcome. You have entered the realm of 1111 Talk Radio. Your host is Simran. It's time to discover your own language with the universe. Empower yourself, broaden your mind, open your heart, and discover who you are. Now, here's your host, Simran.
Welcome. I was listening to my own opening just now alongside with you, and broadening the mind and opening the heart has long been what I have been in advocacy of for myself and for you. My guest and I were speaking before the show, and she remarked that line that I have often said myself, that we teach what we need to learn. And I think that's such a powerful statement because it is so true, regardless of whether you're in the personal growth fields, the spiritual fields, or some other field. What you are doing is deeply related to what you're here to learn, to what within your childhood was seeking answers, and to the wounds that actually set you on your path of exploration to really deep dive into those things. And what was alongside of us the entire time was our mind. And that mind is so multidimensional. It has so many pieces and parts, and the hidden parts of us in the mind are the parts that oftentimes run rampant in the world and can take over. And that's why perhaps today's show on mind training can be so important for you. Because with us being a heady mental society, if we don't take hold of the reins of these charging horses, then they will run wild. And that doesn't always end well if you are living an unconscious life and just letting the thoughts and the mind run amok. And then there's the heart, the part that the heart plays, and whether or not we allow the mind and the heart to interweave with one another. If we let just the mind take over, or if we learn to bring the intelligence and the mind of the heart into everything we do as well. According to Ravinder Taylor and mind training, they say the body has two states, growth and defense. And when the mind and body are calm and relaxed, then healing and growth can occur. For Eldon and Ravinder Taylor, their favorite question is, how high is up? They want to suggest that life is a journey with no specific destination. Instead of a destination, it has an overarching goal. And that goal of the journey is to develop the best of yourself. While we are unable to control the circumstances that life throws at us, with a firm handle on mind training, we are in a much better position to control the course of our lives. The ride may get bumpy at times, but we now have tools that can assist us in keeping our life's vehicle on the road and heading in the direction of our choosing. This is from the book, Mind Training, The Science of Self-Empowerment. And my guest today is Ravinder Taylor. For the past 30 years, Ravinder has been researching and analyzing self-help modalities. She has utilized her learning in thousands of interactions with individuals seeking guidance for breaking through blocks to success in their lives, and many have praised her insights and reported great success when following her recommendations. In addition to working alongside Eldon Taylor on each of his books, Ravinder is the co-author of over 200 personal motivation audio programs and 2 books, Motivational Nudges to Empower Your Life and Peripheral Perception via Subliminal Stimuli. Ravinder has a Bachelor of Science degree in microbiology and is ordained interdenominational minister. She completed a 3-year training course in hypnosis and psychotherapy at the National College of Hypnosis and Psychotherapy in the UK. And again, today we are talking about mind training. So welcome, Ravinder, to 1111 Talk Radio. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Hi, Simran, and it's an honor to be here with you. Thank you so much for inviting me to your show.
This is a pretty comprehensive book that really overarchingly shares many of the paths that the mind can take, the places of the mind, the models of the mind, how we utilize the power of beliefs, and even going into some of the practices that can support calming the mind. Talk a little bit about the intention behind the book and also what you learned through the process of creating this book.
Well, there's a big question. What I learned through the process, that writing a book is hard work, but really, really fulfilling. Mind training, in a nutshell, it's about the art of tweaking formerly subconscious processes to eliminate self-destructive behaviors, enhance health and vitality, and supercharge success potential. What that really means is we have a whole lot more control over our minds than we think we have. Lots of people will think, this is just who I am, this is how God made me, or the universe made me, however they want to look at it. And so there isn't anything that they can do about it. What we show in mind training is that there's a great deal that you can do. You just have to take conscious steps to get there. If you don't appreciate how powerful your mind is, you're giving away your power. But to really activate that power, you have to learn how the mind works. You have to internalize the knowledge. You can know certain things, but there's different degrees of knowing. You can have that superficial knowing that you kind of forget quickly, or there's that deeper knowing that just becomes, an internal part of you, and how you access the world, and how you improve yourself, how you maximize your life experience. So a huge part of mind training is about taking responsibility for the subconscious programming. The programming is going to happen anyway. Enculturation plays a huge role. Media plays a huge role. Our experiences, our biology, all of these things play a huge role. So you have to choose to take responsibility for it, because if you don't, it's happening for you. And if you want to become your own authentic self, then it behooves you to take that kind of personal responsibility for how your mind is programmed. And I go into great detail in mind training as to how we've learned about these subconscious processes, and how they influence us, and how they move us, and how they can hurt us and they can heal us. So taking charge of your subconscious mind is a vital role to becoming the person that you truly are, and not just a reflection of society.
I want to narrow in on the words personal responsibility, because we often think a lot about training our bodies, or looking at our health, or training ourselves to eat in certain ways, or even training ourselves to speak and behave in certain ways in particular situations. And to a certain extent, the mind is something that we kind of take for granted. We feel like it might just operate on its own. But there is this added component of knowing oneself that you kind of highlighted as well. And so when we look at the mind from those two perspectives, it is this operating software within us, this mechanism that kind of has a way to keep on going and keep us going. But yet there's another component which is even beyond feeding it information. It is the discovery of what's already there that we may not know is there behind the scenes. Can you talk a little bit about the training that takes place regarding the mind when it comes to it operating as a mechanism, a mechanical part of us, as well as that introspective look into it so that it can operate at optimability?
There's been a great deal of work done on the subconscious mind. The way we like to summarize it is the subconscious mind is a repository of all of your experiences, everything that you've done. Behavior is often, we learn behaviors. So when we're young, maybe we behave in a certain way and it does not get a good response. And so we dismiss that particular behavioral style. We do something else and it is greeted with praise. And so we do a whole lot more of that. So all of our experiences are in our subconscious mind. And there's been a great deal of work done that indicates that our choices are actually made more on a subconscious level than on a conscious level. So Benjamin Libet in the 80s, he looked at the brain, and he discovered there's activity in the subconscious mind before you actually make a choice. So the kind of choices they were looking at was, do I press the button with my right hand or my left hand? So the choices were really, really simple. And he discovered, as I said, that there's activity in the subconscious mind before you make that choice. Now, this research was confirmed in 2007. John Dylan Hayes used fMRI to do this. In 2011, Itzhak Fareed used implanted electrodes in the brain, and he saw too that there is activity in the subconscious mind before we make a choice. And using fMRI, a technician can look at the information and predict what you're going to choose up to 7 seconds before. And that to me is huge. So we have all of this stuff going on in the subconscious mind. The choices are coming from there. That gets confirmed too. I don't know if you read Kahneman's book, Thinking Fast and Slow, but he talks about automatic thinking and reasoned thinking. So there is the fast thinking, and that's the automatic. Those are our instincts. That stuff is really vital. It can be there to protect us. So you don't have to, if you hear a sound in the grass, you don't have to stop and think about what it is. You're already alerted to danger. It's an evolutionary process. So that fast thinking that says, there's danger, I have to move, and you can think about it afterwards. Well, that is really, really important. But there are so many ways that we act on automatic, and it can be based on our experiences as kids. So as I said, when we do something and we don't get the right response, or if we do something and we're embarrassed by it or humiliated by it, we could determine that we're not going to do that ever again. So, for example, I remember when I was at school, I was about 9 years old, and there was a class presentation, and I had a dual role. So for part of the role, I had these 2 coconut shells, and when I hit them together, that was the sound of horse hooves running. But then I had to give a narration as well. And I remember, I did the sound of the horses, and then I had to do my presentation. So I quickly put these coconut shells down, and the audience laughed at me. It wasn't a mean laugh. It was just amusing because I was a bit clumsy about it. But I remember being embarrassed about that. And it wasn't until I, ahead in the past, actually, it wasn't until I started talking about mind training and doing interviews that I made the connection there, that was why for so long I had a fear of public speaking. There was a time I would not do a radio interview, period, end of quotation. It just wasn't going to happen. But the more you delve into your past, the more you see these subconscious processes, the more you appreciate that they're there. I have found that when you understand how the subconscious mind is programmed, when you then learn to question and you learn where to look for the answers, then the subconscious mind does start to reveal those answers. And the more you do it, the more the answers appear. So if there is a self-destructive strategy there, so for me, public speaking was a self-destructive strategy that would have prevented me from, promotions, doing radio interviews. When you realize that these things are there, and then you question it, when it appears, then that power gets taken away. the power of it gets taken away. So you don't have to have those self-destructive behaviors anymore. It takes a bit of digging around. It takes but the more you trust yourself, it's more of a process of quietening your mind and trusting that the answers will appear, and they do. And that gives you, great opportunities for growth of both, as far as careers concerned or relationships are concerned, but also for your own inner growth, which I think is the more important part.
In the personal growth and spiritual fields, there are many techniques that are often advised, and they are anything from visualization to affirmations, even hypnosis, or oftentimes people utilize quotes that they love, certain types of things that help to keep lifting us and literally shifting that brain. Is there any hindrance in simply using this as a way to redirect focus of the mind? Or is it necessary for people to do that subconscious work alongside for the affirmations, visualizations, and positive thinking strategies to actually work?
That's a broad-reaching question there. First of all, I will say that when it comes to this self-help industry, there are loads of tools that are incredibly valuable. But sometimes they get simplified so much that it becomes a hindrance. There are some common myths out there that, as I said, I think they actually cause more damage than good. So, for example, there's a story of Roger Bannister. He broke the 4-minute mile in 1954. And the way the story is frequently shared in self-help presentations is that up until 1954, people did not believe that you could break the 4-minute mile. And so people didn't. But then Roger Bannister did believe, and he went and did it. And because he did it, everyone now saw that it was possible. They believed it was possible. And as a result, John Landry, just 6 weeks later, broke Roger Bannister's record. So all you have to do is believe. It sounds wonderful. It sounds really inspiring, but it misses the mark totally. If you have ever trained for anything, Simran, you'd be aware that the amount of training or the amount of practice that goes into play. I ran a marathon myself in 2018, but my training began in 2013. Up until that point, it had been decades before I had run properly. And so when I started training, the initial training was for a 10K, and the training involved you would run for 1 minute, walk for 1 minute, run for 1 minute, and it built its way up. And I remember when I reached the 10-minute mark, so I would run for 10 minutes, walk for 1, run for 10, walk for 1, and doing the 4 sets of 10. And I was so proud of myself because in my early training, doing a run for 1 minute was difficult. So when you have these simplified stories, all you have to do is believe, it misses the mark. So with Roger Bannister, he actually started training in 1946. John Landry started training in 1949. They both worked up, they both did it in increments, they were both training. It just happened the Bannister's race was before Landry's. So Bannister's name is the one that most people are more familiar with. Lots of people aren't even aware of John Landry. So it misses the element of, the mind training elements. It takes grit, it takes determination, it takes a great deal of work, it takes dedication. There was a presentation I saw of Tom Brady. He's got 7 Super Bowl rings, and he summed it up really well because he says it's hard work. You have to do the hard work. You have to sacrifice when your partner is in bed sleeping still. You have to get out of bed and you have to go train. When the family's together enjoying desserts and cakes and indulging in these things, you have to say no, because you have to watch your diet, you have to watch what you eat, you have to go out and train even when you don't want to. So simplifying Bannister's story just to all you have to do is believe, well, that sets people up to fail. And when they fail, they give up those techniques.
I really appreciate that story, because it's important for individuals to understand that there is a level of discipline, devotion, and work that comes into achieving these goals alongside the mind. And I think that's where the heart comes in when you talk about doing the 10K that you wanted to do and put in the work. There had to be a level of the heart that was devoted to that alongside the strength of the mind to persevere. The same with Roger Bannister. But in saying that, what often comes up, and perhaps that came up from time to time as you were training for your 10K, and for people that are attempting to achieve any type of goal, there will be this negative self-talk. There will be the doubts and the disbelief that kick in, that oftentimes are conscious and oftentimes stem from very unconscious places. Talk a little bit about negative self-talk when it comes to mind training.
That plays a huge role. That comes all the way back to the self-destructive patterns. You'll be amazed at the amount of negative talk there is out there that we say to ourselves. We talk to ourselves constantly. And lots of that talk can be full of restrictions, limitations. Think about the aging process. I don't know how old you are, Simran, at all, but I do know, I'm in my 60s now. And so I have people around me who are older, and they will often say, oh, we're getting older now. We need to slow down. We can't do what we did when we were kids. And that creates a self-fulfilling prophecy, because what happens is, if you believe that older age means becoming weaker and more feeble, decrepit, then you start to protect yourself. And so you don't exercise, or you don't walk as much, you slow down. And in that process, your body does slow down. It becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. And these things apply in lots of areas. If you don't believe that you are good at math, you won't ever try your hardest to achieve it. If you think that you always get into bad relationships, then when a good relationship appears in front of you, you're not going to see it. These self-destructive negative ideas have a really strong hold. John Gottman from the University of Washington looked at relationships in this regard, when we're talking about the power of bad. And he basically said, in a relationship, if your partner does something that isn't good for the relationship, a simple apology isn't going to cut it. There has to be 5 good deeds for every bad deed in order for the relationship to survive. He could actually predict how good a relationship was, how likely it was that a couple was going to stay together based on how they communicated with each other. And they've seen that same that same idea in lots of different areas in business teams. If you want to inspire your team, inspire your colleagues, there has to be at least 5 positives for every negative, because that negative just has so much more power.
The negative mind, and especially compounded by oftentimes what's out in the world, because there's this field of mental field that's around us all the time that we tap into. And there's so many thoughts that course through our minds and through our bodies every single day, thousands upon thousands of which we never even are consciously aware of. There's that negative self-talk that's internal, but then there's also the negative talk that is external or the cues that people give through nonverbal communication. And that can impact the mind in terms of the direction that we're going. Talk a little bit about the focus that is required to maintain one's own inner authority and goal setting while in a world where there's so many mixed messages and so much noise.
We are a product of our enculturation. There is a great deal of noise out there. And again, your question looks at two different areas that I'm thinking of right this moment. One is the enculturation part of it. You know, there's the meme that goes around that says within minutes of being born, you're given a name, you're given a culture, you're given a country, you're given a religion, and you spend your rest of your life protecting that. So that enculturation process begins at a very basic level, but it continues throughout. You even see signs of that in the placebo effect. But the other part of your question, Simran, when you talk about the influence other people have on you based on body language or a comment or something, when someone says something negative to you, that gets buried in your subconscious mind. But there is also the Pygmalion effect too. There was work done by Rosenthal where they looked at children in school, and where the teachers believed that the kids were brighter than normal, when they believed that they were a lot more talented, then those children actually performed better. They actually looked at first graders, there was a 15% increase in how they performed in their exams. So just the teacher's belief. And what happens is those small things, that the body language, the amount of attention a child gets, they all play a role. Now, the Pygmalion effect, there's a whole lot more to that, and I do cover it in depth in mind training. It goes beyond children. It goes to the workplace, in the military. There are lots of examples of how that comes into play, but that affects what it is that you do. Now, one of the interesting things that came out of all of that research was the Galatea effect. And that was something that I particularly loved, because where the Pygmalion effect fell apart, where someone's negative belief about you didn't hold up, when your own internal belief was strong enough, then it didn't have an effect. So that's the key, how to build up your own inner belief in yourself.
My guest today is Ravinder Taylor, and she has written the book Mind Training, The Science of Self-Empowerment. Mind Training examines how the brain works, including how it can create mechanical-like habits, employ self-destructive behaviors, reward failure, and more. It shows how consciousness is built upon unconscious processes and the kind of impact this can have. This mind exploration is carried out with a keen focus on how this information can be used to improve the quality of life. By maximizing natural talents and abilities, mind training presents a way of life that promotes a process of conscious living. Becoming aware of why we do what we do will reduce self-destructive behaviors. Understanding brain chemistry allows us to increase our overall well-being. Discovering autonomic mind mechanisms can offset the ability for others to exploit them. You can find out more about this book, Ravinder's other books, and the special bonuses that you can receive by getting the book by going to ravindertaylor.com. That website is also listed in the bio description. Once again, we're talking about mind training with Ravinder Taylor. We'll be right back after these messages.
Follow Voice America at Facebook.com/Voice America for juicy updates from your favorite radio shows and podcasts.
Have you seen 1111? Do you wonder why certain numbers keep showing up in your life? 11, 111, 22, 33, 444. People all over the world are seeing 1111 and learning the language of universal communication. Subscribe to 1111 Magazine today. www.1111mag.com. 1111 Magazine is a bi-monthly print publication that offers a rich, multi-sensory experience. As you engage with experts and topics of consciousness, become enlightened, empowered, and energized, so you live a passionate and authentic life of conscious choices. 1111 Magazine, a daily staple for lifting the mindset, discovering the heart, and stepping into conscious living. 1111 Magazine. Order now at www.1111mag.com. 1111mag.com.
Do you want more? More joy, more abundance, more power and presence? How would it feel to have more loving relationships, more empowered community, greater fulfillment, and life purpose? The 1111 Mastermind community inspires, empowers, guides, and supports transformation. Shift your mind, expand your heart, deepen insights, let go and chart a new course, dream a new dream. The 1111 Mastermind community is an online portal for personal transformation and soulful expansion. Go to courses.1111mag.com. That's courses.1111mag.com. Change begins with you. Let it be simple, convenient, and transformative. The time is now. Step through the 1111 gateway. Courses.1111mag.com.
Live up to your fullest potential. This is the Voice America Empowerment Channel.
You are listening to 1111 Talk Radio. Simran is an award-winning author, publisher of 1111 Magazine, powerful speaker of wisdom, and a life mentor. Find out more at IamSimran.com. Now, back to 1111 Talk Radio.
If you're looking to ground a simple, easy, self-reflective practice, I invite you to explore my latest trilogy, Living the 7 Blessings of Human Experience, Being the 7 Illusions that Derail Personal Power, Purpose, and Peace, and Knowing the 7 Human Expressions of Grace. These 3 books illustrate the 3 aspects of you. And they're not books you're going to read like a normal book, although you can. They are actually designed to be sacred oracles. They are designed for you to be able to open a book and simply read one paragraph or one of the bolded sections, and allow that to marinate within you as soul medicine. What you will find over time is that your awareness of your shadow self, identity self, and humanity self come to a heightened experience, and you begin to integrate these 3 parts of you to be more powerful in the world. So I invite you to go to my website and get your copies of Living, Being, and Knowing. And for individuals that want to do a real deep dive into the subtleties of the heart and how the shadow, the identity, and humanity are to braid together, I have now reopened one-on-one training in that and would love to work with you if that is of interest. My guest today is Ravinder Taylor, and we are talking about Mind Training, a comprehensive book that is really on the science of self-empowerment. It is filled with stories, examples, techniques, and also exercises that you can incorporate to support you in learning how to really utilize the mind to a higher potential and understanding how the mind works. I love also some of the exercises that Ravinder has placed in there, such as simply placing a pencil between your teeth will cause the release of dopamine, serotonin, and endorphin. Putting on a full Duchenne smile will increase these benefits, even if the smile itself is not genuine. Diaphragmatic breathing releases endorphin and serotonin and can result in a 50% drop in cortisol levels. And she also goes on to share that singing has been shown to cause a drop in the stress hormone cortisol and and an increase in the happy brain chemical oxytocin. So in older people, singing has been associated with better verbal flexibility. In bereavement, group singing led to a more stable depression symptoms and levels of well-being, as well as gradual improvements in the sense of self-efficacy and self-esteem. There's so much in this book. I invite you to look it up along with her other two books and the books that she has also co-written and supported her partner Eldon Taylor with. You can find out more at ravindertaylor.com and be sure to get the bonuses that are offered. Welcome back, Ravinder. I want to talk a little bit about ego. It's so often that people look at the ego in a very negative way, and yet we also need this ego to be able to do some of the powerful things in the world that we want to do. And that ego has often formed as a protection mechanism to help us move past things in early childhood. But as we get older and as we age, how can we really shift into understanding how the ego can be a place of empowerment as opposed to that protection mechanism any longer?
The ego is a really important area when you look at what it's really designed to do. It was Freud that came out with the id, the ego, the superego. The id is the part of you that wants immediate gratification. The superego is, those ideas that society puts on you about how to be your perfect self. The ego is what mediates the two. It looks for balance in there. As you were talking about your own work and your own books, you were talking about this divided self. And the divided self is really important when you have conflict between these different aspects of yourself. That's when you experience failures. That's when you become dissatisfied with who you are. What we talk about in mind training, we look at different ideas about the mind, like the id, the ego, the superego. But the one that I liked is to do with the four selves, where we talk about the actual self. There is that part inside us that we're not going to share with anybody, because that's where we hold our failures, all the ways that we've disappointed ourselves, all the things that we can do better. That's the part of us that holds the things that we're ashamed of. There is the ideal self that is so perfect that it cannot be real. There's the ought to be self that has all the shoulds and oughts created by society, created by our parents. Every time you're told, no, you can't do that, you shouldn't do that, you have to do this. But then there is the desired self. And the desired self is who we believe we can be. And I think everyone looking at self-help is very aware of the desired self, because we're aware that we can be more. We can achieve more. But getting these different aspects of ourselves into alignment, understanding them, nurturing them. You want to nurture your actual self. There isn't anything to be ashamed of. You don't need to hide yourself. You don't need to feel inferior to everybody else. And that is, in that actual self idea. So that's, as you were describing your three books, that's exactly what I was thinking about. You have to bring these things into alignment. So ego gets a bad rap because everyone talks about the ego as being, egotistical, full of yourself, and it's not. It's the balancing between all of these different aspects so that your goals are realistic, and they honor you. They honor you rather than put you down. So bringing all of these aspects of yourself into alignment is where you are going to find the greatest peace and the greatest personal growth.
You also go into self-concept in the book, and you talk about it being divided into three parts: self-image, ideal self, and self-esteem. And that might not be something that many people are familiar with, because we often hear about self-esteem or self-image, but utilizing the word self-concept seems to be a more overarching way of looking at it holistically. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
That comes from Carl Rogers' work. That was humanistic psychology, and it is just another variation of Freud's id, ego, superego, and our idea of the four selves: the actual, ideal, ought to be, and desired self. Esteem, having a strong sense of esteem, is when you can bring these things into alignment. So it's not thinking so highly of yourself that you put everybody else down, and it's not thinking so poorly of yourself that puts you beneath everybody else. We are herd animals, Simran. We want to belong in society. Belonging is absolutely vital, but we don't want to lose ourselves in the process. We want, if we can't be special, then we want at least to be normal. So these ideas, so that is why we end up taking on so many ideas of society when there are different trends in fashions or tastes. That is our way of joining in and being normal. So there are lots of tactics that can get used in marketing that will really bring in those aspects of, well, if you don't get this coolest, latest gadget, then you're not an in person. I mean, how many commercials have you seen, Simran, where a person hears about some new product and, you know, their ears prick up and they go chasing after it, and then other people hear about it, and soon there's a whole flood of people chasing after this one product that they have to have? Well, that's how the marketing people tie into our desire to belong, to be normal, to be better than other people, because if we can get the product before everyone else, that gives us a leg up. And esteem, how we it can sound weird, but this is how it all ties into esteem as well. It's to do with being a good member of society, belonging, and if we can gain more importance out of that, then we gain more protection in the process.
That herd mentality, I feel like, can be beneficial sometimes, and it can also be destructive sometimes. I have a good friend that is a human design expert, and she talks about how we are now moving into the age of individuality, where it really is important to allow ourselves those places of uniqueness that really actually, in a sense, separate us from the herd, so that we begin to become our own unique geniuses. But yet we all follow these certain stages of development and growth. And I've noticed myself in my own life that when I look at my life versus others, our 20s have a certain way of looking at the world, and then our 30s have a certain approach. And when we reach our 40s and 50s, they have a certain approach. Can you talk a little bit about how you see the mind's place and our development as we move through these different stages? And is that a collective thing, or do you see us shifting more towards the individuality that human design is offering us?
I think there's value in both directions. You are absolutely correct. All of these different ages bring us different things that we need to learn. Eldon is a bit older than me, and it's really interesting when I go through the same ages, how our experiences are so similar. Erik Erikson actually puts out the 8 stages of psychosocial development, and he goes all the way, from a baby up to, old age, and all the different things that you are supposed to learn in those stages and the kinds of effects that they have going forward. So if, in high school, you can learn about your place in society, and the kind of person that you want to be. And that will play out further down the highway. The example that I really liked actually was with babies. They looked at babies and they examine their degree of attachment and bonding, and using that information, they were able to predict how successful they would be in high school when it comes to friendships or the kinds of relationships they would have. All of these different stages play an important role. And to me, Simran, it's all part of the spiritual experience, I suppose. As you're growing, we learn different things at different times, and it's all just part of the experience. It gives you the ability, when you're aware at these different ages, the kinds of things that can hurt you or propel you to success. When you learn that these things come from the past, it gives you the ability to look back at different parts of your life to say, oh, that's why I'm not so good at relationships, or that's why I'm not good at friends, or that's why I feel dissatisfied today. I'm in my 60s and I don't have anything to show for it. Or conversely, that's when you think, oh, okay, I've learned a lot. I haven't always been successful at everything that I've done, but overall, my life has been a success. So that part of it, that is the herd part of it. We all go through all of these different stages, and they're all important. But I did find it interesting when you spoke about the opinion your friend had about we're becoming more individual. And I certainly see some of that. I think before, when I was younger, you just followed what had gone on before. You followed what society told you to do. I think about that when it comes to people getting married and having kids. When I was younger, you didn't even think about whether that was the right thing to do or the wrong thing. You didn't even consider it. It was just the normal thing to do. It's what you do. You get married, you have children, you get a house, and it's all on automatic. Kids today are thinking a whole lot more about this. And there are those people who think there's something wrong in that. And, I've given it a great deal of thought. I've got, my boys are in their 20s, entering their 30s. Society. So I get to see how society has changed and their different beliefs. There was also the belief that you have to work hard to get on. You work your hardest at your job. You be thankful that you have a job. But today, the younger generations are saying, hey, it's not only about having a job. I am contributing to this person becoming super wealthy. Where is the balance in there? I'm not just a cog in a wheel, a hamster, constantly working. Yeah, I get paid, but I'm not getting paid anywhere near what some of these big corporate officers are getting paid. They're questioning things. There's a whole lot of questioning going on today that didn't occur when we were younger. And I see beauty coming out of that, Simran. I do. I think it's a way to create a better society by questioning. So being good isn't just a case of what society has always told us is good. It's about going inside us and saying, how can I be my best person? How can I contribute to society the most? How can I support other people in our process of creating the best possible society? And that does happen on an individual, not a herd level. So that I think that is absolutely vital, and I see a great deal more of that. And mind training is all about thinking again what it is that you thought you knew, and deciding again who it is that you want to be.
The mind doesn't stand alone, and it really is a mind-body-spirit connection. That self-discovery, that individuality, that decision of who we're going to be in the world that we see the younger generations kind of separating more and more into. It is a deepening into spirituality. And within the book Mind Training, you go into different practices, different spiritual mantras, different things that have been studied, that have some scientific backing, that have been able to bridge these different areas. We both come from a background in the Sikh faith, and one of those was the mantra Satanama, which is a derivative of Satnam and a prayer that we both learned as children. And then there are other things that are aspects of meditation or repetition that you talk about, and breathing that you go into within the book. Can you talk a little bit about the spiritual component and how that interweaves with mind training? And we only have a couple of minutes left, so I'd love to hear what you have to say about that.
That's really where I began with working on mind training, was based on the research paper that came out that showed that the 12-minute meditation, Satanama, had all of these wonderful benefits for cognitive health, memory, maybe reversing dementia, all of these things. But the explanations were incorrect. And that was, I take that apart in mind training. And that to me is part of the empowering process, the fact that we can question authority figures. There's other research that has been done that shows that in the presence of an authority figure, our thinking abilities shut down. We don't discern truth and reality. When you have a firm handle on all of this stuff, then you have the ability to personalize it and make it more powerful for yourself. So Satanama, I found insulting. I'm sorry, I found that insulting, because that is so different from Satnam. But you can take the same ideas and bring your own faith into it. When you bring your own faith into this meditation, it just makes it all the more powerful. And spirituality does run through. Mind Training is a very science-based book, but if you look at it carefully, you will see the elements of spirituality running through that. We talk about forgiveness, we talk about humility, we talk about certain processes like meditation and how that affects the mind. Spirituality is a huge element, and you just put it on top of the science, and that's where real empowerment comes from.
Don't you think that right now, especially because of people wanting the quick fix or wanting to understand, and us becoming such a mental society, that the approach through the mind is probably what leads most people into their spiritual-based understandings, or then later deepening into the heart? What do you find in working with people and in talking with people? What is the entry point? Is it the mind? Is it the heart? Or is it the body?
I think people actually begin by finding something that they consider a defect in themselves. I think it's the herd mentality part of it. They want to do better. They want to fit in. But you're absolutely correct. As you start exploring the mind, then you start to say, well, how high is up? If I could achieve this with my mind, what else can I achieve? And the more you explore in it, for me, the more I explore the science, the more I find the spiritual. Sapolsky in his book Determined, he totally wipes out the idea of free will. He's got this everything just really, really science-based, has all the evidence, all the information. But the more I read that book, the more I thought, hey, there's a much deeper spirituality here. The answer is here. There is something bigger and greater than us. We can all do more, but yeah, it becomes an entryway. So you can take hard science and find great deep spirituality in there, which just enhances the human experience. And then we can become the example that other people can see, and they can follow suit. So again, there is a cycle there that I think is absolutely brilliant. But yeah, the entryway, you begin by just being very practical. I have to fix this issue or that issue. I can do it through science. But then it goes a whole lot further, and you discover that how high is up is just an incredible journey. I love it.
How High is Up. I want to let you know that you can go back and access the archives of Eldon Taylor's interviews. I've had him on 1111 Talk Radio a couple of times, and those are quite insightful interviews. And you will find out more about his many books, which are quite powerful. And then this will also be archived so that you can listen to it again. The philosophy of mind training can be distilled into 5 main concepts. Appreciate fully how powerful your mind is. It can hurt or heal you, sabotage you, or springboard you to success. 2, learn how your mind works, how it prioritizes, takes shortcuts, and even distorts the reality you experience. 3, internalize and synthesize the knowledge that your subconscious mind is a reservoir for all your experiences, along with the information you have consumed, including media, news, entertainment, etc. Understand fully that this is the information your subconscious uses to make the decisions that run your life. 4, choose to take responsibility for how you are programmed. And 5, implement the little tricks and tweaks that make it all run more smoothly. And you can do that by picking up your copy of Mind Training, The Science of Self-Empowerment by Ravinder Taylor. Go to ravindertaylor.com and find out more about what she's doing, her other books, and also receive the bonuses for Mind Training. Thank you, Ravinder, for being on 1111 Talk Radio. It was a pleasure. Until next week, I am Simran, in love, of love, with love, and as love. Be well.
Thank you for opening your mind to a new reality, your heart to greater compassion, and your experience of aliveness with 1111 Talk Radio. Join host Simran next Tuesday at 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern Time to step through the gateway of conscious living here on the Voice America Empowerment Channel. Remember, you are not on the journey. You are the journey.